Hello there, my name is Vladimir Izmalkov and I'm here today to talk about AI prompting for technical writers, and specifically why I believe technical writers are uniquely predispositioned to use AI and produce AI prompts more efficiently than others. But first, let's talk about something I call software documentation development lifecycle. In very similar ideas like software development lifecycle, we can talk about documentation. The stages are very similar. So basically, we have some kind of idea how we can improve our documentation. Maybe a creation of a new page, but it may be also like fixing some existence issues, refactoring, or even deleting some content weirdly. So yeah, let's say we have an idea how to improve our documentation. What do we do next? We analyze what's the goal here, what's the targeted audience, of course, of this document, of this piece of documentation, and what kind of parameters we also should accommodate for example, style guides, other existing documentation for this product, or just some parameters of the task at hand. After this analysis, we have all the context we need, so we switch to design. We're actually thinking about, okay, so we need to create this page. How would it fit into the nav menu, into other pages? How it will look distinctly different, but how it will continue the existing storytelling. You see how it would fit the design about it. If it's a design, if it's some kind of a change on an existing page rather than a new dedicated page, well, we can think about how it would fit the existing page, existing content, how would we make it organically looking, how it would make it like providing us with the best possible user experience. Yes, the design phase is actually very important, although quite often skipped, unfortunately. And finally, we have one of the most important stages is development. Well, in our case, we will be drafting, writing, rewriting sometimes, yes. So this stage is notoriously, I think, one of the most anticipated for AI-assisted tools usage. But what I have to tell you is that it doesn't have to be such case. You can use AI on any of these stages. You can use AI tools for your design, asking questions about how would it fit, how would you rephrase things to fit better, and how would you restructure stuff. You can also use it for analysis for your initial research. You can use it for ideation and so on and so forth. Basically, AI tools are very helpful on every stage, and I want to reinforce this idea. On every stage of this life cycle, you can use AI tools to make your life better, to achieve better results faster. That's a very important thing to remember. But let's continue on. Let's say that the development stage is done and we have some content that we have created. Now we are in a review stage, right? We need to do some peer reviews. We need to do technical reviews. Sometimes it's a self-review. It happens. After the reviews, we have all the approvals, right? We kind of need also to test this. Well, quite often this testing and reviews, they could be in the opposite way, right? Since automated tests are cheap and we automated them in CI/CD, we can feed a lot of tests like veil test for spelling and style checks and stuff like that right after the development or even in the middle of it. It's a very simple thing to do, really, but we have to understand that after review and before publishing, the tests are a must. We must be able to provide proof that our tests are green. So now this is the case when we're actually aiming at all tests green. This is the case where everything that we've built, our test environment, our test infrastructure works for us, just to make sure and verify that everything's ready for publishing. On top of the existing reviews, of course, and on top of your expertise as the original author. Well, finally we go into publishing. Yes, that's a very important step, but that's not the last step. Many people kind of forget about that. After you publish the content and became visible to your users, you kind of continue in the life cycle. You continue on, the content of yours, it continues to exist, so you need to provide maintenance to it, as in you need to gather some evidence of it actually working, you need to gather some feedback about it and how you can improve it. So with that feedback, you can go back to ideation, analysis, and so forth. So that's why it is a cycle. It's never-ending cycle of improvement, iteration after iteration after iteration. That's how it's supposed to work. Of course, you have to understand that just as in software development life cycle, some of the stages are can be skipped, and some of them are more important, some of them are less important, some of them are more popular. For example, the development phase, right, stage, it's one of the most popular, one of the most critically important, I would say. But nevertheless, a lot of them are useful. A lot of them are very useful to understand that they exist and that you can use AI-assisted tools for them. So let's talk about how we use AI-assisted tools, specifically this another cycle for like a creative process of very generic, but it actually resembles what we just had. Basically, you have to analyze the problem first. You need to do some preliminary research, let's call it like that, gather more data, investigate, make a theory or just hypothesis to go with. Then you have to plan your efforts, and then finally you go into the generate stage. Well, like previously, the generate stage is the most obvious one to use AI tools, but it doesn't have to be. You actually can and should use AI tools on every stage of this cycle. You see, even for initial analysis, you can use some AI tools to provide you with some summaries, with some facts, especially if your initial content that you're working with is huge, like hundreds of pages long. There are some quite efficient systems to work with that, and AIs are notoriously efficient and effective at just summarizing the text, finding some facts, of course, given a hallucination or two that you should be aware of. At least you should plan for these risks. So then research, yeah, they are great at researching, as in providing some alternatives, synthesizing some theories, basically, that you should verify, of course, but still they're very, very helpful. And planning, yes, planning is very good. AI systems can structure information very well and produce some plans. Or again, your verification is needed. The generation of content, well, of course, AI systems can generate you a ton of content. The quality of this content, though, it would be up to you and up to the AI system. Basically, what kind of query, what kind of prompt you have used, what kind of context you have provided. These are very important factors that determine your output, your results, but we will talk about it later. It's not always guaranteed. The synthesized, what I mean by this stage is that after you have some AI generated content, you should get back to the drawing table and work with it. You should massage it into something more meaningful, something more human flavored, because you, in comparison to AI system, you have this creative intent that you should work with. You see, you have an idea, you have some kind of a good understanding what that idea is about. AI system, it does not have such an idea. It just has a context, and it's soulless machine just working on probabilities and math. Basically, it does not have this creative intent that you have. So you should really go back to the synthesized stage where you actually massage the content that got generated. You refactor it in something more meaningful, something directed to achieving the results rather than looking like it. And finally, you have a review. That's a very important step in any creative process, not only for the documentation. So you actually, again, it can be your self-review or technical review by some subject matter expert, or peer review by your fellow colleague. Why not? The important steps here are synthesizing, as in basically building out of the content that AI generated something that looks better, that works better, and just double checking that it has a meaning, it has a most logically sound structure. That's all very important steps that people tend to forget. Reviewing is more about like polishing and making it shining, making sure that it reads well. That's actually very, very important. You should be able to do that. You should read this text and make sure that people who will be reading this, where they won't tell immediately, yeah, it's just AI slop. It's a low quality. So usually these two steps, review and synthesize, they are quite important to achieving that, to avoiding the AI slop to get into your documentation, which is quite important, right? And finally, we get to the important topic of actually prompting the AI and how we actually get in there, how we actually working with prompts professionally as technical writers. And I think that's a very important topic. I would like to start with this quote by Socrates: understanding the question is half the answer, right? It's a very well-known phrase, and I think everyone should remember that. Everyone should really pay attention to that, because in AI system, the prompt is a centerpiece all your input, including the context you provide and all that, it works together with the prompt. Prompt dictates what exactly you're expecting to get, and AI systems treating the prompt as the something very, very important, really. They're trying their best to satisfy the prompt, not satisfy your needs or your wants, your, day-to-day activities. No, nothing like that. They don't know about that. They know about your prompt, what you send them. That's a very important step. So basically, if you get wrong result, you're looking at that and you're saying, yeah, that's definitely not what I wanted. You should ask yourself, okay, but is that what you prompted for? Is that what your prompt actually asked for? And sometimes even I find myself that, yeah, actually, I see that. I see how this result could be produced out of this prompt, and that's a sign basically that the problem is your prompt. You should work on your prompt a little bit more to be more specific and to avoid such misleading results. Let's put it like that. So, what's the best way to do that? Well, imagine that AI systems are very interestingly they work non-deterministically, though there is no like a specific function that works from this exact prompt you will get this exact result. Yeah, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. With the same prompt, the same context, same everything, you can get and will get different results. So it's non-deterministic system, yes, but how actually it works, well, it's more about like statistics and math, like I mentioned before. And that means that this system tries to analyze the existing experience and produce something like average experience. So if you ask it to produce you some kind of an image with a very vague details, it will produce you something like an average thing that people ask, you see. So if you would then try to add more details of what you want, like to be more specific with your requirements, you see, to specify more details, to specify more parameters, okay, then it will refactor itself. It will actually work from the scratch, I think, and produce something better. Well, in this example, I've tried to produce like 3 stages of this, like refactoring requirements to get results closer to what you expected. So if you expected something on the right, but your query, your prompt got you something on the left, you should revise your specific requirements and parameters of your prompt. That's very, very important. And somewhere around this area, when you try optimize your prompts, you try to be more specific, you can encounter situations when you actually provided more details, but the results was still not great, and the prompt can become very big and very specific, but it's still the results could be quite subpar nevertheless, you see. So you could encounter AI systems even ignoring some of the parameters. And what's going on? Well, usually that means that the prompt is a little bit conflicting, so the AI being a little bit confused by it. It happens even to us. Machines are also can be confused and can also behave that way. But most importantly, you can get to a point when you will start thinking about context management, basically providing all the required context. But at some point, the context can become quite big, and well, these machines have limitations. If you grow out of your context window, it could start forgetting things. It could start forgetting some important instructions or forgetting some important context. That could lead to these results where it didn't account for some important thing that you actually mentioned in your prompt, you see. Even though you mentioned it, it just ignored it. Some of these problems can be just out of context management, so you can start paying attention to it as soon as your prompts become sophisticated enough to have these problems. And of course, if you provided too much, context in terms of files and stuff, it could also create problems down the line. So think about what context you provide. Just try not to go out of your context window. The limitation is, well, it's different for all the models out there. So yeah, if you think there are problems with machine following your instructions, check your context window that you are fitting into it. What else we have here? Well, the interface of AI machines at the moment, AI systems, LLMs, and other AI systems, it actually is highly adaptive. If you think about it, it uses this natural language prompt, which you can send in any language. In most languages AI systems can understand right now, and can be quite effective at determining what you could have mean, or even though like it's still a probabilistic system, especially if you don't know what you mean. It can guess, it can be quite good at it, but still it's basically a statistics thing. It's just finds an average, what average expectation of people using such words in such sentences, what could they mean. Again, this is highly adaptive, but the more you rely on this adaptiveness, the more you put yourself at disadvantage, I guess. You should be very, unambiguous. You should be very direct and clear in your communication if you want the results to be exactly as you asked for. Well, that's where I think that technical writers become actually perfect candidates to, work with AI systems. And specifically, the reason I think so is because these prompts getting closer and closer, especially on sophisticated systems, sophisticated prompts, they're getting closer and closer to specifications. Just, set of requirements and parameters written in a natural language. Well, if you would imagine there is some other places where that could be useful, right? Well, first place that comes to my mind is documentation. Technical documentation is the use case for using natural language with such a focus on precision and context and all the requirements. You see, it's inevitable that technical writers are my first candidates, I guess, that working with specifications. And actual specifications are very interesting way to communicate with AI systems. If you think about it, that any AI prompt that you're using and you're trying to be very specific and very precise in what you mean, well, that's a specification already, I think. And we, as in technical writers, predispositions to write them using the full power of the language. You see, it's very important to use the language correctly and to translate the meaning behind the words that is expected. But also, we are great at gathering the missing data. That's one of the skills that required from this profession. You see, you're interviewing your subject matter experts. You also have this expertise of talking to them and gathering this information, and expecting them sometimes to be, wrong. Most of the time they are right, but sometimes they're wrong. So you can expect some subject matter experts saying different things to you. That's something that happens, and you should be able to communicate with them. So that's one of the skills. But in this particular case, when you're talking to AI, you should also expect it to be sometimes wrong. You should expecting it to know better than you, and you still have to recognize the signals that something seems sketchy, something might be wrong here, and you should pay attention to those. These are very useful skills. And when you're talking to a person and they're providing you with some kind of a story, how something works, it's natural that you start recognizing patterns, you start recognizing some bits and pieces of missing data, like, some blind spots, some white spaces you should feel. That's, again, one of the skills. That's a systematic view at things, when you're actually seeing where in this particular story there could be some kind of a gap that will create problems later. That comes with experience, I guess. So on top of that, you have some skills at researching, doing your own work at investigating something, trying your new product and stuff like that. So all these skills are very, very useful when you're creating these specifications for AI systems. And yet again, I want to reinforce that even on these stages, when you're just creating a prompt for AI can help you to do that. That's literally what could happen. You can ask AI to build an efficient prompt for something, and it will fill out the details, and you will double check, like review the result, of course, and you will fix the details in such a way that it would fit your understanding, not AI's understanding, because AI understanding isn't just average, it's just statistics, right? So that's a very important thing. You should work together with AI to produce better prompts for the AI. That actually works. And the sheer amount of skills technical writers have around figuring out the exact precise language, the exact missing details, how to search for them, who to ask for them, what the questions that might need to be asking. What questions, how to formulate them to ask the subject matter expert to provide you with such information. That all the skills you need, really. But also, one of the interesting things that we need to take into account is, the approach that technical writers have of audience-centric design. Basically, when we talking to these subject matter experts, we're always thinking about our target audience. You see, we thinking about how they will understand what just this subject matter expert told us. Maybe we need to dumb it down, or we need to I do the opposite. We need to make it sounding a little bit more advanced, maybe a little bit concise and shorter, expecting some more context awareness for the target audience. Well, the same could happen to the AI. You just pay attention whether AI has all the context, whether something that you're using in your prompt can create problems down the line, just out of your own experience, really. And one of the last things on this slide, on this list, is I personally experienced that technical writers quite often collaborate with all kind of different engineers, subject matter experts. So experience in collaboration, the wide variety of it, it's quite interesting. And you can use this experience. You can use similar approach working with AI, expecting it to be your partner, collaborate with it, not expecting it to do all the work or you to do all the work. We're just working together. You bouncing ideas out of it. You just work together and figure out the strong and weak sides of it, so you can complement each other. I think that's the best way. And again, all of these skills that I've mentioned, technical writers, well, they have a weirdly fitting, unique combination of them. And I think that's a huge advantage. You should exploit that advantage. You should do that. You should work with the AI systems, design the specifications, and work towards your goals, just advancing your skills in the AI prompts, the more sophisticated prompts if you need to. That's my point. Well, thank you for watching this video. I have some additional resources for you. For example, these videos I have, like technical writing career overview, the technical writer skill tree, and also guardrails and tips for AI-assisted technical writing. Also, feel free to check out my mentorship program, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.